Well, Mineral Resources Minister Gwede Manatashe has given industry stakeholders 30 days to make submissions on the recently released draft mining charter. Some have raised concern, though, about the charter's potential to divert investment from the country. Chris Stevens is Director and Head of the Mining and Resources Practice at Werksmans Attorneys. He joins us on the show to discuss this and unpack this for us. Chris, good evening to you. Thank you for your time. Is this a better draft than what we saw by Manatashe's predecessor, Mosebenzi Zwane?
Well, at the outset, this is a far better draft. Last year's version that came out approximately a year ago was a shambles, really. There was no consultation with industry. There had been prior discussions with the Chamber of Mines and other stakeholders, which were ignored by Zwane when he published the charter last year, and it led to litigation and lots of unhappiness. And I think Gwede Manatashe has come in and really made an effort to address the concerns of all the stakeholders. He probably hasn't got it right in all respects, but take my hat off to him. I think they've done a pretty good job in the short space of time in producing a document that's far better than the previous version. It's not to say it's perfect, and it's not to say there aren't some still fairly substantial issues, a lot of drafting issues apart from principal points, but I think we're on the right track.
Let's talk about the friendliness as far as investors are concerned. I was reading earlier the Mineral Council of SA saying the charter doesn't bode well for investment. Do you think it's investment friendly?
Well, to a certain extent it is, because it's a great improvement on the previous version. So I think from that point of view, investors are probably looking forward to negotiations still over the next 30 days. And hopefully the government will take on board comments so that the document that's ultimately gazetted will be a document which will be investor friendly. I think the 30% is not really an issue for new mining right applications. I think the industry has bought into that. But I think there are problems in regard to existing right holders, existing mines, the top up from 26% to 30% over the next 5 years, which may be problematic because existing mines will have to effectively hive 4% of their interest in a project, which they didn't have to do up to now. So it does have an effect on the investment in mines, existing mines. Then, of course, new mines, there's a requirement that 8% be furnished to communities, 8% to communities, of which 5% must be a free carry. Now, what a free carry means, we think from the government's point of view, is that the shares are effectively given for free to the community interest and to the employee groups for every single mine, and it's a complete free carry in the sense that they don't have to contribute at all to any of the expenses. So,
is that constitutional?
It may be constitutional, but it may well be against company law principles, where shareholders are obliged to pay free shares. You're differentiating between shareholders of the same class, so you may have to create a separate class for shares. And they also provide for a trickle dividend of 1% on an EBITDA basis that has to be paid to each of the employee group and the community group, which could be extremely onerous for a company. It may not be in a position to declare dividends, but statutorily it's going to be forced to pay a dividend of 1% after the 5th year of the mining right. And it may just not be in a position to pay dividends at a particular time. There are many reasons why a company cannot pay dividends. Depends on their cost structures, what expenditure they're putting in, what capital and replacement expenditure they have to put in. So it puts an economic burden upon a mining company that may be completely unrealistic in the circumstances.
If it's not constitutional, though, if we perhaps use that argument, what kind of say or power does government have to then force companies to do it if it's not constitutional? Is it just based on what the companies believes to be correct?
Yes, well, if nobody challenges it, it will be enforced. So it's all a question of how this pans out. If it goes through in its current form, we can probably expect litigation of some form from some interest group, and it just puts us back at square one. So I would hope that the government actually takes heed of what the industry has to say and other stakeholders have to say, so that the ultimate document is not subject to constitutional scrutiny.
It can always get quite messy. Conrad, I'd like to talk about something that hopefully won't be messy. Chris, come July, I think early July is the mining summit. Give me your take. Do you think this summit in July is going to be beneficial for the sector? It's a final question to you.
Oh, yes, I think it is. I mean, I think this is a a starting point. I think it's almost a negotiation point that we've reached, and I think it's now an opportunity for companies to make submissions and for all stakeholders to make submissions on this, and hopefully the summit will achieve something that will be beneficial to the industry, because I think investors are waiting to invest in this country. We're the most mineral endowed country in the whole world. We are still vastly underexplored. There are still major projects that could come on stream, but investors need to know that we've got a stable system that is subject to constitutional scrutiny and that is beneficial for investment and for all stakeholders.
Chris, I appreciate your time. Thank you. I'm sure we'll be speaking to you again closer to that mining summit. You're this evening joining us on the show. Chris Stevens is the Director and Head of the Mining and Resources Practice at Werksmans Attorneys here on ENCA Moneyline.